Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. COVID, the virus, is over. Congratulations. Fantastic news. But COVID, the political and cultural phenomenon, is still worth exploring. And we're going to continue to do that a little bit longer here. We've learned a lot about the virus in the last year and a half. But we've learned even more about people and about human nature. In this segment, I have 3 stories of political dividing lines, but then 5 examples of experts, the vaulted experts, infallible experts, who before COVID were saying masks are useless. Before COVID, they said masks were useless and then were steamrolled by the cult and they fell in line. That's what we got coming up in this segment here. So let's start with the political ones first. Governor of Michigan. You got Cuomo in New York, Newsom in California, and Whitmer in Michigan. The worst of the worst. Right? Those 3 just, I don't know if they're worse tyrants or hypocrites. And they go back and forth. Whitmer, this weekend, was in a bar in Lansing with 13 other people unmasked when the state law, for no scientific reason whatsoever, says that in Michigan, you can sit at a restaurant, but no more than 6 people per table. And there she is with 13. Someone posted that picture on Facebook and then quickly deleted it. And her excuse afterwards was, I am human, and it was a mistake. Get out of here with that. That wasn't a mistake, right? You made a decision to do that. You made a decision to go, to participate, and then to continue to participate in the thing that you won't let anyone else do because you don't think the rules apply to you. That's not a mistake, that's a decision. But just added to her list even. I mean, we know stories after stories of politicians all across the country violating their COVID protocols, but even her, a couple months ago, she went to Florida to visit her dad. And then when she was caught, she said, well, it's okay because I don't have COVID and my dad's been vaccinated. Yeah, I know. It's fine. Do whatever you want. Go to a restaurant, go visit your dad. But let everyone else do the same. And then the most offensive response she could have possibly come up with, she said, hey, listen, anyone who doesn't know that I would visit my ailing father who has health issues, anyone who doesn't realize that I would take care of him, doesn't know what kind of person I am. It's like, oh, okay. You can break the rules because you really love your dad. I didn't know you really love. I didn't know you're actually a good person. You broke the rules because you're a good person, as opposed to the rest of us who don't love our parents and we're not good people. We don't have a legitimate excuse to live our lives like you do, Queen Whitmer. Apologies for that. Unbelievable. These people should, like in a rational, sane world, she would resign immediately. She'd be so ashamed of herself for what she did and who she is. And alas, she just apologizes, laughs it off, and goes on like nothing happened. That's the first story. Second, Pennsylvania. Well done, people of Pennsylvania. Passed a law the other day. It's 53 to 46. Unbelievable that it's not even more than that. But 2 laws, in fact. One says the state legislature can veto a governor's emergency declaration. The second says that a governor's state of emergency is limited to 21 days unless it's extended by the legislature, by the people. Those are excellent checks on a governor's power. Right now, or until now, the governor had the ability to keep a state of emergency forever. And here, the people of Pennsylvania said, no. We now have a limit on that governor. Well done, Pennsylvania. Excellent work. In San Francisco, for example, there are, the other day, and the last couple of days, there's been no deaths from COVID in all of San Francisco. The other day, there were 2 new cases of COVID in the entire city, and they're still in a state of emergency. That's the second story. The third one, I don't know where you are, if masks are still a thing. I think on this TV show, I've been extra hard against masks. I've been on like a crusade against masks because they're still necessary in California where I live. but still less so every day. I went to a couple places yesterday and no workers stopped me to put a mask on. So even here in California, it's on the way out. But I want to share this here because this is a lesson on how quickly even the experts can cave to political pressure. So I missed one. Sorry, I missed the third one. Sorry. The third story, excuse me, New Hampshire. Apologies. New Hampshire. New Hampshire, do you know the state motto of New Hampshire? Guys, play the video here. Do you know the state motto of New Hampshire? The state motto of New Hampshire is live free or die. All right? That's the best state motto ever. That should be the state motto of America. But this woman, as you see here, was arrested for not wearing a mask on government property at a school board meeting. Arrested for not wearing a mask on government property. The mask obsession is entirely built on a lie. So I have here, so that's the third political story. Excuse me for skipping around. So I have here 5 times that experts said that masks are pointless. These are all before COVID, and then the cult took over. The cult took over and steamrolled these experts and many more. And the cult, wearing a mask was never about, there was never a scientific reason to wear a mask. It was entirely a cult symbol. It was a cult membership tribal symbol that I hate Trump and I take this virus seriously. I'm not like Donald Trump. I'm not like those conservatives. I take this seriously and I care about other people. It was entirely a moral projection from the jump. Right? So scientifically, these are based on science, these are 5 times, 5 experts who said that masks were pointless. The first one, this is 2011. England had a pandemic flu plan. We had one in America as well, right? So if a pandemic flu ever comes, what do? We just take the plan off the shelf and here's what we got. And again, we have these in America as well, but this one is from England. Face masks must be worn correctly, changed frequently, removed properly, disposed of safely, used in combination with good respiratory, home hygiene in order for them to achieve the intended benefit. Research also shows that compliance with these recommended behaviors when wearing a face mask reduces over time in line with the scientific evidence. The government will not stockpile face masks for general use in the community. So why not stockpile masks? Because they don't work. In line with the scientific evidence. Why not stockpile masks? If they're the, oh, you gotta wear a mask. If they're so obviously the end all be all of protection, why not wear it? Because they don't work. And the British government knew that back in 2011. Second one, bring it up to January 2020. The UK nerve tag, new and emerging respiratory virus threats advisory group. So it's a panel of experts. They were asked about masks. This is from the minutes of the meeting. The committee reported that there's no evidence to support that the wearing a face mask by the general public reduces transmission. It's also noted that this may add to fear and anxiety. Instead, the emphasis on hand hygiene should continue. So this group, again, not just a bunch of schlubs on Twitter. This is the new and emerging respiratory virus threats advisory group. They explicitly said, don't wear masks because it'll increase people's fear and anxiety. Pretty amazing, right? Third one. This is a doctor, this is on the BBC. This is April 1st, 2020. This is a doctor from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Again, London School of Hygiene. Well, clearly they're going to be for masks, right?
One of the reasons that people wear masks is they think that it's going to protect them from virus. But the virus isn't floating around in the air. So it's not protecting me against anything because it's not there. It's probably going to be on my hand because I've shaken hands with someone who's got the virus and I have transmitted it. I have carried the virus to my face.
Notice how each one of these groups say that it's about touching things, touching people, and then touching your face. Hand hygiene. Each one of these groups talked about hand hygiene, not wearing masks. That video goes on to talk about the WHO says you don't need to wear masks unless you are sick, just to prevent large droplets from spreading the virus. And then she goes and basically says, just don't go around hacking on anyone, and you're fine. This is the fourth example of experts saying masks are pointless. This is Michelle Oden. She's a professor of epidemiology and population health at Stanford, right? So she's an epidemiologist at Stanford. She's far left. Her Twitter profile has her gender pronouns and hashtag Black Lives Matter, okay? So she's politically very far on the left, but this is before the tribal allegiance told her exactly how she needs to behave and what she must do. She says, I'm in a room, this is early in the pandemic, I'm in a room full of epidemiologists and scientists, and not one person is wearing a mask. Lots of hand washing and sanitizer stations. If 800 epidemiologists aren't wearing masks, you don't need to either. Fifth example. 5 doctors published a letter in the New England Journal of Medicine. This was May 21st, 2020, so it was about a year ago. I love this. They're asking if hospitals should mandate people wear face masks when they're in the hospital. And they throw this in here. They say, well, we know that wearing a mask outside healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure to COVID as face-to-face contact within 6 feet with a symptomatic patient that's sustained for at least 10 to 30 minutes. The chance of catching COVID from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal, right? So they're like, should people wear masks in hospitals? I don't know. Well, I mean, they definitely shouldn't wear them like anywhere else. Like, that's obvious. Should we wear them in hospitals? Yeah, maybe, because it kind of it tells people, it reminds people that there's a pandemic, and it tells people that the hospital's taking it seriously. So yeah, I guess we should make them in hospitals. But anywhere else, like, no, of course not. Here's my favorite line of it all. This is them giving away the whole thing. It's clear that masks serve symbolic roles. Masks are not only tools, they're also talismans that may help increase healthcare workers' perceived sense of safety, well-being, and trust in their hospital. Although such reactions may not be strictly logical, we are all subject to fear and anxiety, especially during times of crisis. So put on your talisman before you walk into this store. Put on your good luck charm. Rub your rabbit's foot. Bring in your magic crystals. Bring in your dream catchers, your 4-leaf clovers, what other pagan item you want to wave in front of you to ward off evil spirits. You want to bring your golden calf, garlic around your neck, whatever it takes to ward away evil spirits. They say, well, sure, I guess you can let people do that. That's all the mask was, and that's all it is. It's a talisman, says these 5 doctors in the New England Journal of Medicine. It's a talisman, a good luck charm, and a symbol of tribal membership. What a lesson this whole COVID experience has been about human nature and people's hysteria. And even with the experts, how they can flip instantly, not based on science, but based on politics and fear and panic. Let me end this. This is the, we got to go here, but this is the fact you need to know about COVID, the virus, today. This is from a professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Daily cases of COVID are now 1/10 the number of daily flu cases in the middle of a mild flu season. Not the same as daily flu cases. 1/10 of the number of daily cases of a mild flu season. And he says 80 to 85% of adults are immune. You got 60% of adults are vaccinated, and then half of unvaccinated adults have natural immunity because they've already been sick and recovered. So that's 80 to 85% immunity. Done. That's it. Herd immunity. COVID is over. Let's celebrate. But we can't, because the cult that's been wearing masks all this time says you must continue to live in despair. We must merely languish as a nation. Why? Because Trump wanted to open up. He wanted to open and celebrate and get back to normal. Trump was the nation's cheerleader. That's what he said. He said, I'm the cheerleader. I'm supposed to be positive here. We can do this. We're America. We can power through. So the left, the cult, has to take the opposite approach. They always have to be sullen and full of malaise. So be scared, be reluctant. Let's merely languish back to normal. How inspiring from our overlords. So we need to do the opposite. Go outside. Be healthy. Go places. Go in groups. Get with your family. Travel. Free of your masks. Free of fear. put the panic behind us. And let's prepare for the next manufactured panic that's coming our way any day now. I joke. Certainly there's going to be more manufactured panic, but there's also going to be some real reason to prepare as well. Natural disasters, riots, civil unrest, stuff like that. My Patriot Supply, they are the largest and the best preparedness company. It's not just food, although you need that, right? And if you go to the website that we set up just for you, preparewiththefirst.com. Of course, you can go to their normal website too, but go to preparewiththefirst.com. Preparewiththefirst.com. We got some special deals, $50 off, 4-week supply of food. They got the food, but they also have any other preparedness things you need: emergency blankets, special candles, fire starters, anything of tons of water purifiers. Super important to have that on hand as well. And then, just like the man of the house should, you have it, you check it off the box, you're set, you're prepared forever. This food lasts 25 years, right? So you're set, and now you can rest easy knowing that you're prepared when no one else is. And the next crisis that comes, whether it's manufactured or real, everyone's gonna be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Everyone's gonna be freaking out, panicked, like out of control in dangerous situations at grocery stores and gas stations, all this madness. And you're not. You're gonna be safe at home with your family. Preparewiththefirst.com and see how prepared you are. And if you're not, get prepared. Preparewiththefirst.com. Speaking of preparedness, we got some great Second Amendment news we have coming up next. True story. Mike Slater, Spread the Word.
Is there a crime problem in this country?
Well, I would say certainly there is a guns problem, and that's something the president would say. And there are communities where local violence and community violence is an issue.
First of all, of course, it's a guns problem. But I also love this euphemism. Did you catch it at the end? Local violence, community violence. It's community violence, not crime. No, so don't call it crime. It's community violence. Watch the euphemism treadmill on that one. The euphemism treadmill is, we just keep coming up with more euphemisms until eventually the word that we use to describe the thing is actually the exact opposite of the actual thing itself. That's the euphemism treadmill. So it's going to keep going because community violence is like, it still has the word violence in it. So they're going to keep coming up with new terms for crime until we get so far away from crime, it's actually going to look like the opposite of what they're trying to say. So it'll be probably by the end of the year before crime won't be known as community violence. That's still too negative. It'll be known as something like community building. I'm not kidding. Like you're gonna read some headline, and it'll be a New York Times headline: community building at all-time high. And you read that and you're like, oh, well, that's great. Like, I love community building. Community building is a wonderful thing. And then you'll read the article and it'll be about how 100 more people were shot and killed in any city in America than the year before. And you're gonna think, wait a second, I thought this article was about community building. And you're like, oh, that's just the left's new word for crime. So right now we're in the middle of the euphemism treadmill on that word. So stay tuned. And then, of course, the left always thinks the problem is guns, so they want to ban all the guns. Meanwhile, Texas said the other day, they said, hey, everyone, here are all the guns. And I guarantee you, gun crime in Texas, or all crime, is going to go down. Texas is now a constitutional carry state, as they call it. It was just signed passed by the legislature. The governor said he's going to sign it right away. So in this segment, I want to highlight the difference between California and Texas when it comes to guns. We could do this all day about a million different things because it's night and day. They're like two completely different countries. And which one's winning? Well, one's growing and one's shrinking. California, for the first time ever in like 150 years, has a smaller population than the year before. We lost about 180,000 people net. So one's growing, one's shrinking. One wants to take your guns, and one wants to allow you to buy all the guns. So in Texas now, any resident over 21 will be allowed to carry a firearm open or concealed without a permit, as long as you're not deemed as someone who can't, like a felon, for instance. So Texas is taking shall not be infringed seriously and literally, as opposed to California, where you're not allowed to do anything. You can't carry concealed or open, and it's almost impossible to get a permit to do anything. But it's not just Texas that is a right to carry, not even a right to carry state, excuse me. It's a, what do they call it? Constitutional Second Amendment state. Here's the map. So you can see, I was going to go through the states, but you can see the map right there. All the dark blues are the states where you want to carry a gun? Sure. Now, one thing I do love about this Texas law is it does two things. It enhances criminal penalties for felons caught carrying, or people who are not allowed to carry a gun. If you are caught carrying one when you're not allowed, then it enhances your penalty. It also requires the Texas Department of Safety to offer free online courses for gun safety. This is wonderful. This does two things. Let's start that second one first. The police department, law enforcement, they no longer are responsible for disarming people in the community. They're now responsible for helping to properly arm people in the community. So here in California, there's a animosity between law enforcement and the people. Like, law enforcement prevents you from owning guns, but in Texas, they help you own a gun properly. They want people to be competent gun owners, right? It's super important. Law enforcement should not see gun owners as an adversary, right? We're on the same team. In a rational world, Texas, law enforcement helps law-abiding people be competent gun owners, and that's the exact way to go about it. Second thing, in California and other blue states, you got a criminal who breaks laws using a gun, and the legislature punishes everyone. They punish every single person by saying, oh, now no one can own this type of gun or whatever it is. No, punish the criminals. Punish the criminals. So this approach that they're doing in Texas, everyone's free to carry a gun if you want, but if you break the law with a gun, or if you carry when you're not allowed, well, just the criminal gets in trouble. It's a crazy concept, right? The criminal, the person breaking the law, gets in trouble, not everyone else who's not breaking the law. But that's California versus Texas for you. The second point I want to leave you with before we get to Sam Brown back and talk about religious freedom around the world, particularly China and also the Middle East, is these people in California and across the country, DC, or whatever blue state you're in, these people who are passing these anti-gun laws, they have no idea what they're talking about. There's no issue that politicians legislate on that they understand less about. This is the record. This is the thing that they legislate the most about, that they know the absolute least about. It's amazing. They have no clue what they're talking about. David Chu, he's a California state assemblyman. He's a big anti-gun guy. He's proposed and passed a bunch of laws here. He wrote this on Twitter. He said, finding this discarded packaging of a semi-automatic on a leisurely weekend walk was disturbing, particularly during this month's surge of gun violence in San Francisco. Hashtag end gun violence. Hashtag enough is enough. Do you see the packaging of that Glock 19? That is plastic packaging for an air gun, for a toy air gun. It says it on the packaging. It says air gun. But also, who thinks that guns come in little hanging clear plastic packaging? It's like that. Who thinks that that's how guns come? Like it's like a G.I. Joe action figure. You know who thinks that guns come in packaging like that? Someone who's never bought a gun. Someone who knows absolutely nothing about guns. So when people rightfully called him out, he said, I deleted an earlier tweet that misidentified a Glock 19 air pistol. While not a semi-automatic, it's still disturbing to see remnants of a weapon that can cause injury, especially in an area where young kids play and while we're dealing with a surge of gun violence in San Francisco. I love how he says, well, listen, okay, so I was wrong. It's not a semi-automatic. No. How about it's not a gun? How about what that mea culpa? Turns out it wasn't a gun. So the moral of the story is the people who call for greater gun control, they literally know nothing about guns. You would think the people who want to ban guns would be the people who know the most about them, right? Like in a rational world, the people who want to ban guns would be the experts on guns, right? They know the most, they understand the most, and they've therefore come to the conclusion that these are not safe for people to own. But in reality, the people who know the most about guns have the opposite conclusion. They want law-abiding people to own them and to be trained on them and how to use them properly and how to store them properly. And they want to teach their kids and other kids how to respect firearms. The people who know the most about guns want to teach people the most about guns. The people who are most ignorant about guns want them banned. We talked yesterday about curiosity. And how people, we all need more curiosity. And you'd think these state legislatures who want to ban guns, you think they'd at least go, like, take a one-day crash course about guns. Like, just take one class, go shooting one time, learn as much as you can, so at least you can use the right terminology. We got to go here, but I got a couple silly examples here. We'll just do two examples here. So this is Ryan Riley. This is a couple years ago, poor guy. He's the Huffington Post senior justice reporter at the Department of Justice. And he was reporting on Ferguson, on the ground at Ferguson, so it was at 2014. And he took this picture of something on the ground that he found. He says, I think these are rubber bullets. Can anyone confirm that these are those are earplugs. And if anyone has ever been to a shooting range, you would know, but clearly he never has. I think my other favorite best ignorance about guns comes from this USA Today graphic. This was after some mass shooting a couple of years ago, and they talked about possible modifications to a AR-15 style rifle there that you can add a 12-gauge shotgun to the bottom, which, like, I guess you can. There's a trigger crank, which you can. But here's the best one: a chainsaw bayonet. What? A chainsaw? Holy cow! Whoo! Whoo! That escalated quickly. Chainsaw bayonet. What are you, in The Walking Dead? Chainsaw bayonet. I look forward to visiting Texas soon, getting out of this tyrannical state that is California and visiting Texas and walking through the grocery store and seeing every law-abiding American with a chainsaw bayonet strapped to their hip, like all good Americans should. True story. Mike Slater, spread the word. That's in New York City. You kidding me? Just the other day, our Secretary of State, Blinken, he released the 2020 International Religious Freedom Report. But I'm a bit worried. We mentioned this in passing yesterday. We're going to have to do a full segment on it tomorrow. 43% of millennials don't believe in God. 43%. It's by far higher than any other generation. I'm worried that when you have such an atheistic culture, which just doesn't believe in God at all, that there's also got to be a correlation of that group also not believing in religious freedom at all for anyone, right? There has to be a connection between those things. And forget about international freedom, or excuse me, religious freedom abroad, but even religious freedom here in America. Sam Brownback is here. I don't know whether to introduce him as Governor Brownback or Senator Brownback or Ambassador Brownback, but he's all those things. Sam, how are you, sir?
Sam is just fine. I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, you're from Kansas. I figured that would work too. Ambassador, it's wonderful to talk to you. Most recently, you've been the U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom. What do you make of what I just stated there about the future of religious freedom here in America?
I think it's something we're going to have to fight for. Even though it's in the First Amendment, it's the first sentence of the First Amendment. It's what the country was founded upon. I think we're going to have to explain it all anew to people and how this is a central foundational human right. It's in our Constitution. It's in the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 Declaration. It's foundational building block for a society, a healthy society, that you respect people's differences of religious views, and that's how you can build a society together of different opinions. But I think we're going to have to explain it again to a new generation that isn't as grounded, as perhaps interested in things of faith as prior generations.
I think we've had a couple generations that have been able to ride the coattails of like, well, yeah, of course we have freedom of religion. But as you said, we're going to have to start redefining and re-arguing this. But I want to ask you, because clearly you've talked to other world leaders and people around the world who maybe have not, definitely have not grown up in a country where, oh yeah, of course you have freedom of religion. What do they think about our freedom of religion? And what do they say maybe defending their country that doesn't have freedom of religion? Are there defenses against this First Amendment?
You know, it's interesting. Probably the Chinese have, in my estimation, one of the worst models on the other side of this. And they defend their model as a legitimate structure for government, saying instead of human rights, we have community rights. And we that sit on top of it define what those community rights are. And we say, because we're atheistic, that's the standard. So China literally has a war on faith now. They have a war on Tibetan Buddhists. They've got a war on Uyghur Muslims. They've got a war on house church Christians, underground Catholics, Falun Gong. You go through the whole list of them. And they defend it, saying this is what's good for the community, for the broader state. This is a horrible idea. This will not work in the long term. China may be at war at faith, but they will not win this war. But they look at us as a competing interest, and they're saying, look, your system's failing. Your system isn't working. And I say, we may be having difficulties, but our system is so much superior to one run by one man sitting on top of the whole pile telling everybody else this is the way we're going to do it.
This is so interesting. Can I just ask you to dive a little deeper into that? Because I've never heard that term that they use, community values. So how do they, because I just see people in America falling for that too, right? Like, oh, we don't believe in biblical values or religious values or even human rights values. We believe in community values. I see people falling for that. So what do they mean by it?
Well, we got human rights. They say they have community rights. And what they're saying by that is that the people that sit on top of the community define what the rights are for the good of everybody. And they say, look, during COVID, we were able to lock down everybody. And in that system, then we could really slow the movement of the virus. And we've got democratic institutions, and you have human rights, and you have the right of freedom of assembly and speech. And so you can speak out of different thoughts. And they're saying ours is superior in dealing with something like that. And we're saying long term, that you can't define a culture by some one person that sits on top of it, making all the decisions and hoping they get it right. And I think Xi Jinping has made a number of horrible decisions lately, but he defines the community values and the community rights. Whereas here, our Constitution defines what the human rights are, and they're an individual right. They don't go to the community, they go to the individual, which that's where it belongs. That's the God-given nature of it. God gave us, he didn't give the United States the rights, he gave us, he gave you and me, he gave everybody in this country these rights, these individual human dignities. It's not defined by the broader state, it's defined by you as an individual and your relationship as a dignified child of the living God.
Such a foundational truth that so many people in the world don't have, and so many of us are forgetting as well. So let's go to the Middle East. And we can, I don't want to take this time to talk about the details of what's going on now, but what's just the bigger picture when it comes to religious freedom in the Middle East?
Well, I think actually the bigger picture has some real positive news in it. The Abrahamic Accords that the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan entered into with Israel recognizes, I think, a real shift in the Middle East amongst Sunni Muslims of recognizing the state of Israel and starting to open up, saying, everybody doesn't have to be a Sunni Muslim to be able to survive and live and thrive in our country. We want to invite a broader cross section. Now, the Iranians are still an enormous problem, and I look at them as a big perpetuator of a set of a lot of the problems in the Middle East. And unfortunately, Turkey is also starting to play more aggressively in that region, and really trying to stir the pot and more fighting between the Jews and the Muslims, when Israel just wants to get along with everybody and have the whole area be lifted up in prosperity and freedom, and being more open and a more open society, and a one that can economically grow. And that's the future for the Middle East. And I really think the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan are seeing that new future and saying that's much better for our young people than the one the Iranians are putting forward.
I literally just saw this tweet, it was sent out a little bit ago, from some prince or someone high up in UAE, flying from Dubai to Tel Aviv, which is not something that would have happened in the beginning or before the Trump presidency. Now let's bring it back around here. The video we started off the segment with, that was a commercial grade firecracker, at least, going off in the streets of New York City. What do you make of the rise of anti-Semitism in America?
Unfortunate, and yet a kind of a continuation of history. Unfortunately, the Jewish people have experienced anti-Semitism since the very beginning, and it continues today. Each generation, though, has to push back against it and has to stand, I believe, for the Jewish people, but for all people's freedom of religion. That you may agree or disagree with what my view of faith is. I follow Jesus. You may agree or disagree with that, but that doesn't matter. As long as I'm peacefully practicing my faith, I have a right to do that. And the Jewish people have a right to peacefully practice their faith. And we have a duty to protect that right. And furthermore, when you do that as a society and you protect these religious freedoms for majority or minority faiths, when you protect that, your society thrives. You have a more open society. You have less security problems. This is a way for a country to move forward and not back. And we've got to constantly, though, push back against the rises and tides and ebbs and flows of anti-Semitism. It happens. It happened in my state while I was governor. I had a man go into a Jewish synagogue, the grounds, and looking for Jews to kill, and killed 2 Christians. We prosecuted him to the full extent of the law, but he was there to try to kill Jewish people, and you just got to constantly fight against it.
Mr. Brownback, I'm glad you're leading this fight on the international stage. I'm grateful for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care. God bless.
Sam Brownback, YouTube. Sam Brownback, former governor and senator from Kansas, and the former United States ambassador at large for international religious freedom. We got to fight for it abroad, but goodness, we have to fight for it here in America too. True story. Mike Slater coming up with 1776 commission. It's back. Talk with him coming up next. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, we're all familiar with the 1619 Project by now, right? Teaches all of our kids, it's infiltrated almost surely every school by now, that America was founded on slavery in 1619, and slavery and racism is ingrained in every single aspect of American life, even to today. Well, President Trump started the 1776 Commission as a counter to the 1619 Project. Joe Biden, I think the first thing he did, put the kibosh on the 1776 Commission. But the 1776 Commission is back now, and Matt Spalding is leading the charge. They had their first meeting again yesterday. Mr. Spalding, how are you, sir?
I'm great. Good to be with you. How are you?
Last time we talked was the day that Joe Biden got rid of you guys, and you're back from the ashes on the day that you return, which is wonderful. What's your next mission?
So we issued a report, and 2 days later, it was abolished by the president by executive order, which, first of all, I find absurd that the president of the United States would abolish a commission on 1776, but be that as it may. We would have advised this president had he kept us around. But there's also nothing that prevents us as private citizens from continuing to meet and to make statements and comments. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of absurd things going on. We're a group of experts that have been working for good parts of our lives on this question about the principles of the founding and American history. Of course, we're going to be involved. There's absolutely no reason why we would merely go sulking away, because the Biden administration abolished the commission with the intention of going in a different direction about equity and identity politics and critical race theory. And those ideas are completely antithetical to the principles of human equality enunciated by Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln, the founders, despite the fact of this great, terrible existence of slavery in our founding. The principle was there, and we should follow it. And the left, the right, Republicans, Democrats have followed that forever. And he wants to go in a different direction now, and we find that problematic. So, yes, we're going to continue commenting on all this.
I think more and more parents are starting to realize and see this taught to their kids and appalled by it. And we've highlighted all the big examples on this show many, many times. We give more every single day. What's something that you're seeing, though, that's a little more, shady's not the word, a little more stealth, that's being snuck in there, insidious, that maybe most people aren't attuned to see that's in this curriculum?
So we keep seeing examples of particular phrases. One of the things I would have people watch out for is, we use the phrase critical race theory, but more and more they're backing away from using that phrase. So now they talk in general terms about equities, or for a while they referred to identity politics, but now they speak in more general terms. And we got to be careful. The terms sound okay, but these are ways to essentially introduce through the back door, if you will, forms of racism. And I think it just directly has to be considered as that. We want to teach students to make racial distinctions in the classroom and look at white people differently from black people. That's extremely problematic. And regardless of what we call it, should be removed from any forms of curriculum, and it should be opposed by states, and parents should be very careful about it. The school system should not be used to teach students of whatever color and creed to make such distinctions as a matter of what they're being taught. That is the very definition of racism, it seems to us, and is totally absurd and should be objectionable based on all the ideas emanating from the American founding that all men are created equal.
I saw a headline on MSNBC, because there's all these states now passing bills that ban critical race theory being taught in the curriculum. And MSNBC said, more states passing bills that ban the teaching of slavery. As if that's
which of course, that's absurd as well. So most of the critics of the 1776 report, turns out, have not read the 1776 report. And that's why it's widely available. Despite being abolished, the 1776 report is available on numerous websites. I encourage people to read it themselves. It's very open and upfront about the existence of slavery and the problem of slavery and the fact that it is contradictory to the principles of human equality. Absolutely. Our belief is that you teach accurate history, warts and all. That doesn't mean we now turn around and teach it the opposite, which is to say that all of American history is about slavery is inherently systemically evil, which is also just historically inaccurate and to the point of being absurd. We are teaching students racism. That's exactly what it's doing.
30 seconds, Matt. What is one of the greatest foundational principles of America that our kids need to know?
Very simply, that all men are created equal by nature, and it makes no difference what the color of your skin is. That is the principle of America. That's what makes America different and exceptional. And any departure from that, whether it's John C. Calhoun in the Civil War or critical racism, race theory, and anti-racism today, are both violations of that principle. And American parents should know that and make sure their students learn that as well.
And I love your commission has advice on parents on how to push back against this as well. Where can people learn more about the 1776 Commission?
We're going to have a website and some other things going out right now. You can read the 1776 report on various websites, including ours at Hillsdale, and collect that information. And our statement is widely circulating in the media.
For what it's worth, Matt, I just want to encourage you and the whole team there to keep up the wonderful work. We're counting on you. As a parent of 3 young kids, we need you.
Thank you, and I thank all the encouragement of Americans. Encourage them to do this as well. We can't back off of this, and we need to keep fighting.
We can't. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you, Matt Spalding from the wonderful Hillsdale College. On our special on Friday, we're talking about some Memorial Day related things. We're going to talk about the Tuskegee Airmen, black men who proved the haters wrong with their actions, not just with whining and complaining, but with their actions. Kids need to learn more about people like that. True story. Mike Slater, Spread the Worms.